Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sydney. This is my true crime channel where every Thursday I will be posting a video talking about the craziest true crime in each state. So far we have already done Alabama and Alaska, so today is Arizona. Happy Halloween! Also, by the way, I don't know if you can tell or bought this thing for like $1. It lights up. It's cool. Bought this mesh black looking stuff. It's cool, I guess. So the last two videos that I've done have, obviously it's been crazy. But today I want to give a disclaimer myself, not just a typed up one. Today does involve the murder of children, not targeted specifically, but I did want to give out a disclaimer because it is children, it is minors that are involved. I personally do not feel comfortable talking about a serial killer that targets children himself or herself. So a video itself will not be where the only people that were victims were children. That is not something I feel comfortable with. But when it comes to like a family murder or something along those lines, then yes, I will talk about that. If you guys are squeamish when it comes to children's murders, I don't suggest that this video is for you, and I would suggest that you click off it or just watch the other two videos. I mean, yes, obviously true crime, there is some death that happens. Not the best, true crime's not for everybody, and that's okay. But for the people that enjoy true crime, this video is one of the craziest true crimes that I have possibly ever read. Without further ado, we will get into it, starting with Robert Fisher. And this is Arizona's craziest true crime with Robert William Fisher and his family murders. So on April 13th, 1961, Robert William Fisher was born in Brooklyn, New York to his two parents, William Fisher and Jan Howell Fisher. It didn't quite say exactly when the family relocated from Brooklyn, New York to Arizona, but it was around the time that Robert was in school because he did attend a high school in Tucson, Arizona, or Tucson. When Robert was 15 years old, his parents divorced and his mother left completely. It is said that it was really, really hard on his siblings. He had an older sister and a younger sister, and it hit Robert the most because the divorce was like really turbulent, really unsettling. And Robert explains that if it hadn't been for his mother leaving, his life would be completely different. When Robert graduated high school, he went on to join the U.S. Navy, where he was a firefighter. That was his job duty. He attempted to get into the Navy SEALs, but he didn't succeed, which kind of put a toll on him. He was really aggravated at that, but he didn't let it get to him that much. His job after he was a firefighter, he was a surgical catheter technician and a respiratory therapist. In 1987, Robert met Mary Cooper, and they went on to get married, and he had met Mary because Mary and his sister were really close friends. Mary was described as a very amazing person. She was a very lovely mother and a dedicated wife. Her kids were her #1 priority, and she was also very active in the church that her and Robert and the kids attended in Scottsdale. The two children that they had were Brittany and Bobby II, or Robert II, otherwise known as Bobby, and Brittany was the older sibling. She was around 2 years older than Bobby. The couple had a very rocky marriage. They were known to argue a lot. Robert was known to be a family man, but he was very cold and very distant to his family, and described his relationship with his kids as really awkward. Robert wanted outsiders and family and friends to look at their family and see them as very close-knit and almost the perfect family who attended church and were very happy. Robert controlled everything that the kids did. He controlled what they ate and when they ate it, what time they went to sleep, what time they woke up, and even what to wear. Robert was known to be a great hunter, avid outdoorsman, and he loved to fish. And he wanted very desperately for Bobby, his son, to love and care about the same things that he did, but Bobby did not share the same hobbies and passions that Robert had. An unknown source that was interviewed by detectives later on said that it was really weird that one time whenever him and Robert had went hunting, they had killed an elk, and whenever they were gutting the elk, Robert had taken the blood of the elk and just smeared it all over his body, had like taken off his clothes and just kind of doused himself in the elk's blood. Robert took the term sink or swim too literally, because it was said that he was very cruel to his kids, to the point that instead of teaching them the proper way to swim, he took them out on the lake in a boat and he threw them out of the boat and basically told them they're gonna have to fend for themselves and learn how to swim that way. So Robert was not the best father. Robert also controlled the way the house was going to look on the inside. He only wanted the walls painted white, and he said that he had to control how many pictures went on the wall and exactly the placement of what picture went where. But there was only a certain number that was allowed to go on a certain wall, and so on and so forth. Because of the divorce that Robert had seen his parents go through whenever he was 15, he was really scared to get it close to his extended family, because he was scared that if he got too close to them, they were going to abandon him, just like his mom did. He was kind of isolated, like he only kind of kept ties with his own family, his own intermediate family. He wasn't really close with his sisters or anything like that. So explaining Robert and Mary's marriage, it is said that he was very dominant, very controlling, and treated Mary like a doormat. But on a separate note, it also said that Mary didn't take any of Robert's crap, and she stuck up for herself a lot of the times whenever he would start treating her bad. Neighbors that were near the family stated that you can constantly hear them screaming at one another. They were always yelling at each other and always arguing. Wade Rinksock, that was one of the neighbors, explained that Mary actually yelled way more than Robert, and she yelled some really harsh things. She would constantly yell, "You're worthless, I should have never married you, and that we should get a divorce." Wade says that this went on for about a decade. Mary was always the one to be yelling. He rarely ever heard Robert yell back at Mary. In 1998, Robert and Mary had a pretty rocky hardship come over them, because Robert had cheated on Mary in a one-night stand. It is said that it was with a prostitute, and then it also said it is with a masseuse. But either way, Robert did have an affair, and he was terrified that Mary would catch on, because he kind of fell sick afterwards with either an STI or a UTI. He didn't know which one it was, but he felt like he needed to tell Mary just to be on the safe side. Just in case she contacted something that he had given her. Because of this, the couple decided to separate, but then they rekindled and decided to take marriage counseling at their church they attended, and this was right after Mary had said that she wanted a divorce, but Robert did not take that well, so that is why they decided to do counseling, because they wanted to rekindle their marriage and fix everything. So because Robert knew that his marriage was starting to deteriorate a little bit, he decided to confide in a coworker, saying that he's going to rededicate his life to Christ and his faith, so that way he can be a better family man and a better husband, so that he could keep his family intact, because he did not want his family to fall apart due to the divorce that he had went through whenever he was a child. People around town stated that they were the absolute perfect family, because they just went to church all the time. They were always happy in public. Every time they looked, you could just tell that they were just having a good time, but little did they know that behind closed doors, it was actually falling apart. On April 9th, 2001, Brittany had a Junior National Honor Society meeting at the school, and this was on a Monday night, and Robert had taken Brittany to her society meeting, while Mary had taken Bobby to a hunting lesson. Whenever they all arrived home, they got into a very big argument while the kids were getting ready for bed, and neighbors said that it was very loud. It was louder than normal. So while the children and Mary had gone to sleep, Robert had stayed up and had waited for them to go to sleep. Feeling his marriage slip underneath his fingers, he decided to go into the children's bedrooms while they were sleeping, and he decided to slit their throats from ear to ear, almost beheading them. He then went upstairs and shot Mary in the back of the head, also slitting her throat from ear to ear. The next morning at 8:42 a.m., neighbors had heard a very, very, very loud and startling boom. The Fishers' family house had went up completely in flames and had exploded. The explosion was so intense that people said that it could be felt up to about a half a mile away. There was people around that had heard it and had felt their house shake after it had happened. There was also fewer smaller explosions that had happened recently or quickly after the big explosion, which investigators believe were because of small paint cans that were in the house and firearm ammunition. A gas line that was found pulled out of the furnace at the back of the house was the sole reason as to why the house had exploded and gone up in flames, and it was caused by a candle that was lit that had sparked the explosion. Firefighters arrived at the house and extinguished the fire, and they found 3 bodies. It was Mary Fisher, age 38, Brittany, age 12, and Bobby, age 10, that were all incinerated. Robert's body, however, was nowhere to be found at all. They were looking for Robert's body, but there was only 3. So Robert quickly became the primary suspect to the case almost immediately after they couldn't find the body. There was a 10-hour window between the murders and the explosion that police had believed that Robert had that small time period to escape. Whenever the bodies were sent to the autopsy to see if the fire was the cause of death, they quickly discovered that they were murdered before the fire was even set. Investigators believed that the reason of the fire was because whoever, at this point, they hadn't really been able to convict Robert of the murders. The reason was because they were trying to get rid of the DNA found. The autopsy reported that Mary had a bullet in her head, and fire does not burn bullets, so it was determined that they were murdered before the fire had started. The bullet that was found in Mary's head did not match the description of any of the firearms that were found in the house, and so they believed that the bullet that was found in Mary's head belonged to a gun that was found missing out of a case that Robert had owned, so they believed that Robert had taken the gun that he had shot Mary with. So backtracking to the night of the murders, police had found a ATM footage where Robert had pulled up in his wife's 4Runner to an ATM at a gas station, and he took out a weird amount of $280. The amount of money was odd because he had way more money in his account. He had a lot of assets. He had savings that he had for Brittany and Bobby, so they were confused as to why that was that amount, because you're only taking out a certain amount each day. They believed he would have tried to take out a different amount another day, but it was only that certain amount, which was $280. So the hunt for Robert started, and an investigation opened almost immediately after understanding what had happened. They were just trying to put the puzzle pieces together to figure out, why is Robert not found in there? Obviously, he's the primary suspect because his body wasn't found. So police issued a warrant out for his arrest, and this whenever they told the citizens to be on the lookout for Robert because he could be armed and dangerous. A few days after the murders, a couple who was driving on a highway said that they were driving past a man who was walking by himself. Whenever the wife, who was in the passenger seat, drove by, she recognized him to be Robert Fisher. So she called into authorities saying that she had seen Fisher, but she had waited too late because she had waited until she got home. So this gave a pretty good gap for Robert to escape because, he's possibly seen. He might have recognized the lady in the passenger seat, and he realized he needed to get out of there quickly. So, police really couldn't do anything with that information. A week after the murders, Mary's 4Runner was found in the woods in Young, Arizona. This spot is a frequent camping spot that Robert would go to sometimes on the weekends, where he would take his dog Blue. So Blue actually was found with the car, but not Robert. Robert's body was nowhere to be near the car, so they were confused because the dog was alive and he was just guarding the car. Shortly after that, a bartender had called in saying that there was a couple that walked into her restaurant in Rye, Arizona, and she stated that the couple was kind of off. The woman immediately went to the restroom, and the man had ordered a drink at the bar. After he ordered his drink, he stood near a fireplace and completely kept his face hidden from everybody. He was constantly trying to hide his face, didn't want himself to be known. And immediately after the girl had came out of the bathroom, they started arguing and then they left the restaurant. Well, the following day, a lady called in saying that somebody had rang on her doorbell, that there was a young girl who asked to use her phone because her boyfriend and her had just gotten into a really bad argument and he had dumped her off and she needed to call a cab, but she did not have her phone. This led investigators to believe that the woman who had called for the cab was the same woman that was at the restaurant because she matched the same description that both women had explained, the lady at the house and the lady at the restaurant. So investigators started thinking maybe Robert was having an affair. You know, he was very cocky and arrogant, so the woman probably helped him escape. She probably was in on it, but you know, they couldn't tell because they didn't know if it was Robert. There was no one able to confirm if it was an affair because it did not happen in the workplace. No one could say that there was an affair going on between any of the co-workers that he had worked with. And so, you know, the only confirmation of an affair that they had was previously whenever Robert had cheated on Mary, but it was whenever Mary knew about it because he had explained to her the night that, you know, that's before they had the marriage counseling. So that was confirmed that that was the affair, but they don't know if there was a separate affair with this woman that he had, or that these people had stated were in an argument together. So they believe that Robert had a motive, and the motive was because Mary had had enough. She wanted a divorce. Robert did not want that. He did not like the feeling of separation that he had had whenever he was a kid. So whenever he targeted the kids because of this, was he didn't want them to go through exactly what he had went through. So that is why the kids were also killed besides Mary. Investigators also say that the reason why Robert had taken Mary's 4Runner was because he had a very big diesel truck and it was not going to be able to get into the woods, and the 4Runner was easier to get into the woods. Since that was a very known camping spot that Robert went to frequently, they decided to look in the surrounding caves around the camping spot that he would be in. So they looked specifically in a cave that they named Cave 41. Because Robert was in the military, they brought SWAT team members, and they also brought cadaver dogs to pick up Robert's scent to see if maybe he was inside the cave. Robert was not found in any of the caves, not especially Cave 41 that was the closest to the car, and there was no evidence, there was no body, and there was no evidence in Mary's car that linked Robert to the murders. They only found a fingerprint on a cup, but that doesn't explain anything. It only explains that Robert was in the car. This is confusing because the dog was still at the car. Like, he wasn't tied up or anything. He was just at the car. So if he wasn't tied up, why did he not follow Robert? Why did Robert even bring the dog in the first place? So backtracking, whenever Mary had asked for a divorce, Robert did drive to the same area of the woods earlier, and he did contemplate suicide, but he decided not to put his family through that. So whenever investigators are led to believe that he might have committed suicide after, you know, it was a murder-suicide, but there was no body found, so they can't conclude that. The chances that Robert did not do this are very slim to none. If Robert would have been in the house and somebody had a break-in, then Robert would be, you know, dead too. But Robert had taken all of his clothes with him, so why is he hiding? You know, if he did not do this, then where is he? It's hard to determine exactly what Robert did because of the random $280. He wouldn't have just taken that amount out of the bank account and then just killed himself. Like, he had to have spent that money on something. Investigators are still torn because they don't know if Robert had hitched a ride or if he possibly camped out really far out, like went on foot for days on end and then killed himself there. So they don't know if he committed suicide or if he even took on a new identity. There has been no other forms of money taken out of his account since. Even though he was an avid outdoorsman, he cannot survive alone outside in the wilderness. He just wasn't, you know, a professional outdoorsman, so, you know, there's no way that he knew exactly how to live by himself in the woods, because who lives in the woods, you know? No one's gonna find him. Robert became a part of the FBI top 10 most wanted, and he still to this day has not been found. He is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of arson. There has been many calls that were made to the FBI to explain Robert's whereabouts, but there has been no big leads that have brought investigators to travel to there. In 2009, a tourist in Guatemala was taking pictures, and there was a man in the background that was very defensive and asked, "Why is my picture being taken? Can you delete it? I need you to delete that picture." But, you know, you can't really determine if that's Robert or not, because some people just don't want their picture taken. So, you know, the FBI didn't really do anything with that. One prank call had actually come into the FBI where there was somebody that had claimed to be Robert Fisher, and they were saying really disgusting terms like, "I'm glad I killed the bitch, you know, the kids are gone, I'm at large, y'all can't find me." Just being really gross, and the FBI just took it as a prank call, which is still really sad. Backtrack to February 2004, in Canada, there was a call that came in saying that Robert was found in Canada in White Rock. So investigators believed that it was undoubtedly him. Wade, the neighbor that I had mentioned earlier, was actually hired to pretend to be a prisoner to go in so he can look at Robert and be like, "Yeah, that's him." Wade was walking, and he could tell by Robert's walk and his voice that it was indeed Robert. Whenever they had made contact, Robert actually looked at him as if like, "What are you doing here?" And Wade looked into his eyes and he was like, "Yeah, that's him. Like, we got him. Like, this is him." Even though the suspect had the same body type, a scar on his back, and almost all the same facial features, the fingerprints did not match. It was not Robert at all. So even though Robert is a part of the FBI's top 10 most wanted, still to this day, he has not been found almost 20 years later. The FBI published what Robert would look like to this day, so I will put pictures here as to what this picture looked like and what he would possibly look like now. FBI states that Robert had a very bad back injury that causes him to take pain medication, and he has a scar on his lower back. Because of his lower back injury, he possibly walks with a really chest out posture to take some pressure off of his lower back, so he might have an elongated posture. I don't know how to say it. He has a gold crown on his upper left tooth, and he chews tobacco, so his teeth might be a little stained. He has blue eyes, brown hair, and sits at about 6 feet tall. Robert possibly has changed his appearance by growing out his hair or growing out facial hair. For anybody that maybe, you know, possibly be watching this that lives in Arizona, he possibly has ties in New Mexico and Florida. So if anybody knows anything about Robert's whereabouts, you can contact the Scottsdale Police Department or the Phoenix FBI. I will link their numbers down in the description box below. This is the longest 20 years? Like, how do you not find somebody for 20 years? I don't know. Let's talk about my thoughts on the case, okay? I don't know what to believe, if I'm being 100% honest. I believe that the ATM withdrawal was a really weird amount, and I think that he's smart enough to not take out another amount. I don't know if he's alive. Like, I really don't think that he is. Planning a murder and or a triple homicide with arson, and then being able to escape without getting caught completely. Like, I personally, I don't know. The police haven't found any bodies or any remains of a body at all. But if he was an avid outdoorsman and they found his car, it's weird with the dog. Like, why did the dog not follow him? They know that Robert was alive after the fire because, you know, of the fingerprint on the cup. So it did determine that Robert had driven the car to the woods. That is known, that is a fact. But the thing is, why is it that Robert is completely, still to this day, 2 decades later, not found? He has to be dead. This is such a sad story. People are just so sick. People are just sick. What can we take from this situation? Let's talk about that. What can we take from this situation? Sometimes stories like this makes me not want to get married. I don't really know what to take from this video. I mean, I feel like it's a little crazy to do like a background search on somebody before you get married to them, but at the same time, he didn't really have, like, besides his parents getting divorced, like, he didn't really have a hard life. This is just... Okay, so that I don't keep rambling, I'm gonna go ahead and finish off today's video. I hope that you guys have a wonderful day after this. Don't let this hit you too hard. It did hit me really hard. I love you guys. I appreciate y'all for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment down below what you think about this video. And I will see you guys next Thursday with Arkansas. The Arkansas one. Alright, thank you guys so much, and I appreciate y'all. Bye.